think really the shift towards online has been huge, and the shift towards free has been huge. And so what I've experienced in the platform, I think just parallels what's going on in the outside world. And I think that we're still at the tip of the iceberg. I think that we're going to continue to see this paradigm shift. And I think that's evident when you look at the attendance numbers that are going on and live events around the country. It's been reported to me by the majority of speakers that we work with that they're seeing the numbers for classroom events decreasing and the number for online events increasing.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a good one. Our guest is the president of CPAacademy.org, which is a website that offers an easy-to-use platform for knowledge sharing and idea exchange through the marketing and presenting of the most up-to-date educational content and developments important to the accounting profession. Scott Zarret, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. And first off, let's let the audience know a little bit about yourself, because I'm sure that many of them may not even be familiar with your website and all that it does. But if you could start off by sharing a little bit of your career background and how did you become the Scott Zarret running CPAacademy.org?
Good question. So it didn't happen overnight, to say the least. I've been at it, though, for about 6 years. So I started CPA Academy with the purpose of creating a platform that uses education to position presenters as thought leaders so that they can sell services. And the reason that I ended up going down this road was really out of personal need. I am a CPA and was looking for a tool myself when working for my prior employer to really help get me in front of large audiences to provide them education on the niche service that I was involved with at the time, which is cost segregation, another term for depreciation. And so I created the platform because it's something that I really wanted for myself and knew that others would benefit from using as well.
Wow, that's cool. I love when businesses are started from just satisfying your own need. We've had a few guests on the podcast that have talked about and had similar experiences. And tell us a little bit about CPA Academy and what has it become?
Yeah, surely. So thanks for the introduction, by the way. And I think you did a good job at providing some background information on it. But we are the largest provider of free continuing education in the accounting profession. And so our model is really based on providing free education that's as I mentioned, is used for positioning our presenters as thought leaders. But the topics that we offer expand quite widely from technical subjects, meaning accounting and auditing and thought leadership classes. And they're really very diverse in terms of topics that we cover. We really pride ourselves on bringing in new and interesting speakers. The lengths of the sessions are usually between an hour to 2 hours. Most of them are closer to the hour to hour and a half. But we really pride ourselves on covering a wide variety of topics that are beneficial to CPAs, to bookkeepers, to CFOs, and really anyone that's in that accounting space. We've processed over 2.5 million registrations. We have over 200,000 users. We've offered over 1,000 unique topics. And while our focus is really, it started with webinars, online education, we've expanded into self-study as well as group live events, meaning conferences and CPE, really for all of the learning methods that exist.
Wow, it's amazing. It leads me to my next question, which is how have you seen the way professionals are getting information? What changes have you seen over the 6 years that you've been working at this?
Well, the history of education is a long one. And, really, I think what's happening is that the accounting profession has been fairly late to adopt the changes that have existed outside the profession. And what I mean by that is that free being the key element here. So there's been a couple of very large paradigm shifts. One is the shift to free. CPAs and bookkeepers certainly recognizing that free content doesn't equate to low quality content. And so I think putting down their guard in terms of willingness to take courses where there isn't a fee, realizing that it's the same quality as the content that they've been accustomed to paying. I think the other big shift has been the openness to taking classes online, or the interest in people wanting to take classes that are online as opposed to traveling, getting in their car and perhaps even on a plane, because they're realizing that it's, there's a lot to be gained from being able to focus on a class and taking it in smaller bite-sized pieces as opposed to drinking from a fire hose and taking a class for 8-hour chunks of time, or in some cases multiple days on end, where your mind just cannot process that much information and digest it and apply it. And so I think really the shift towards online has been huge, and the shift towards free has been huge. And so what I've experienced in the platform, I think, just parallels what's going on in the outside world. And I think that we're still at the tip of the iceberg. I think that we're going to continue to see this paradigm shift. And I think that's evident when you look at the attendance numbers that are going on in live events around the country. It's been reported to me by the majority of speakers that we work with that they're seeing the numbers for classroom events decreasing and the number for online events increasing. So I think, essentially, I saw these trends many years ago, and I think it was only a matter of time before this shift happened, but I certainly don't want to be at the tail end of the curve. I wanted to be on the front end of it and help drive that movement.
That's fantastic. And what, with everything that's happened since you started, what would you say the challenges that you face and the industry faces today?
Well, I think that every educational provider faces the same challenge, which is quality control. Putting out the right content and the right subjects, that is, and highest quality content while keeping the content diverse and having something for everybody. And certainly when you're putting out, in our case, we did about 1,500 webinars last year, and we're a small organization. You have to rely on others to provide quality content and be able to figure out who's good. Not every presenter is going to resonate well with an audience or with an entire audience. It's difficult to find speakers who are able to really capture the attention of large audiences with diverse backgrounds. And so I think that challenge, again, exists for all of us, and not just in the accounting profession, but outside it as well. I think that what's happening as the world is flattened, to quote Thomas Friedman, is that there's more competition for speakers, and whereas maybe it used to be enough to just provide a lot of content, now it's got to be high quality content, and if you don't earn the respect of the audience, then they're not gonna show up again. And so, one of the challenges for us is reading the feedback from the audience and taking it very seriously and making adjustments and hearing what they say, and also going on your gut sometimes. The audience may not be asking for a certain subject, but sometimes it's important to bring it to their attention, and it can be difficult to be aware of what people want to know and what you feel they need to know, and making sure that those two match.
That's fantastic. And it's so true. The world is changing rapidly. And so not only do you have things changing in the way that we do business and the way, all the different apps, but as well how we're learning. And so these are challenges you're facing, but the listener as well there's so much information out there that's part of the challenge as well. What is most important to be listening to, and while still remaining focused on where someone's trying to get to in their business and their practice. This audience, as we talked about before we got onto the show, our audience primarily are bookkeepers. Talk a little bit about what a bookkeeper would look for in your CPAacademy.org. What would be a great place for them to get started, to go in there and start looking for some of this content? Where would you recommend?
Sure. So I'm not a bookkeeper. I'm a CPA. But having said that, it's very easy for me to know what bookkeepers are looking for, because I go to the same events. We all go to the same events. So we're attending the same conferences, and I think the short answer to that question is look in the exhibit hall of any of the large events that we go to and see who's there. All the software vendors, if you want to rate them based on size of booths, great. If you want to rate them on some other subject matter, but the exhibit halls are loaded with software vendors that have solutions that are driving the future of the profession. And I spend my time at a lot of these events speaking to each of these exhibitors and asking them if they'd like to present on our platform so that they can get in front of bookkeepers and go directly to them and share with them whatever they like, whether that is a demo, whether that is a thought leadership class, or a combination of the two. And so really one of the things I'm proudest of is that there was a gap missing from all of these software vendors who spend this time at the exhibit hall but don't necessarily have a place to provide real content. They don't generally get center stage at these events because those spots are usually reserved for thought leaders. And yet the demos are critical, to their job performance. And so our platform is really a combination of all of these different vendors who will come to me and say, here's what we want to talk, here's what's most important. And my goal is to get them in front of the right audience and let them do their thing and put their best foot forward. And often I find that the speakers really step it up because the audiences that they're presenting to are generally among the largest that they've ever presented to. And so our platform is a one-stop shop for finding all this content. Much of it is live, but a lot of it is recorded too. And I mentioned that we did 1,500 webinars last year. Many of those are repeat subjects, but we have presented over 1,000 unique topics on anything from, you name it, any subject at all is in our archive library and free to view. And we have people viewing these courses, 24/7, literally 3:00 in the morning. And it amazes me. But it's been consistent now for years.
It's remarkable, the amount of content, and you talked about quality control already, just mentioning that was a challenge. 1,000 different topics, 1,500 events or training sessions. That is a lot. How do you ensure quality? I mean, you listen to the feedback from your users and those sorts of things, but does your team review and follow every single session?
I appreciate the question, and sometimes it's easier than others. And when you think about some of the larger vendors who were using this model well before I came along, before CPA Academy existed, there are many publications and other organizations that have provided free webinars and have for a long time. So many of the speakers that we work with have been around the block. They come to the table with refined presentations, with their finger on the pulse, and need really no guidance. They've got it down, and it's been a successful part of their lead generation. And so with those presenters, and they're generally fairly easy to spot, given a conversation with them, given their bio, given a quick listen to prior courses, or just general understanding of who's who in the marketplace. But there are also many speakers out there who are not seasoned whatsoever. They may be new vendors, and we see them at every single conference, a company that has a new solution. Some of them are rising stars, and some of them we'll never see again. And so it can be difficult among them to figure out who's who's going to put, their best foot forward. And so our mentality is that we give everyone a chance, and the audience is not quiet. They're not subtle in speaking their mind. And so we do appreciate putting speakers on a platform who are new and helping groom them. And some of them we don't hear from again, and others become rising stars and turn into the next, amazing speaker. So our goal is to, try to figure out who's who and to help them put their best presentation together on the first shot, because many people just, with the best of intentions, just literally don't know how to put on a good session, what makes it engaging, how to use a webcam, how to use Q&A, what percentage of the session should be a demo. I mean, there's so many things that go into a high quality session, and it shouldn't be assumed that everyone knows those tricks. And going back to the earlier point, even the speakers that are seasoned, there's still a lot to learn. And that's true for all of us. We learn from our presenters, they learn from us, and we all learn from the audience. So it's an evolution.
I love it. I mean, that itself speaks to any kind of running a business, right? You don't start off as a pro. You start off as whoever you are, and you work, you make mistakes, you get, feedback, you improve your game. And so I love the idea of that. It's not just putting people into a room, generating a bunch of content, but really working with the people who are providing it, giving them feedback, learning from them. It's exciting, and I love the spirit of that. Webinars are powerful. You're educating people, and you're not only giving them valuable resources and thoughts and ideas to help them in their lives or businesses, but you're also, as the person delivering it, giving them an inside look at what your product is, connecting with them personally, letting the audience get to know them. I mean, it's very powerful. And we use webinars ourselves to do very similar things. Would you think that, do you see a trend that our listeners might someday say, gee, I have customers. Would I be able to do a webinar, just a standoff webinar, and present that some information to customers? Do you see that happening where more and more small businesses are actually leveraging this kind of technology?
Well, webinars have broad application for all professions. Whether you consider a webinar to be an increment of 1 hour or 30 minutes or even 5 minutes, there's certainly value in putting together content and sharing it with the right group of people. And I think that it's intimidating. A lot of people don't know where to start, or they don't look at themselves as being an educator. They look at themselves as being a practitioner. And I do think that there's been a shift in mindset. And I see it even in small examples with folks that are first starting to put together content on Facebook, realizing that, it's beneficial to get in front of a camera and to connect with an audience and build up a following. So whether, you believe that you should provide your content in short chunks or in longer chunks, an hour or 2 hours, is a matter of comfort and what you're comfortable with, and a matter of what's appropriate given the line of work that you're in. But I believe strongly that we all have something to offer, whether or not we look at ourselves as being educators. But we went into our professions not because they were easy. Certainly, you don't become an accountant or bookkeeper because you're looking for the path of least resistance. We signed up for being lifelong students, and we've all had to learn a tremendous amount along the way, technical skills and business skills and personal skills. And it's just a matter of what we feel comfortable sharing with others, and being confident that what we have is something that's of value to others. And whether the class is for CPE or it's just done more socially, I think it is important that we get ourselves out of our comfort zone. This podcast is taking me out of my comfort zone, in that I've actually never done a podcast before, and it was important to me to be tested and to go into it with the confidence that at the end I provide some content useful to others. And I think it's important that we take some risks sometimes and put ourselves out there and have faith in the process.
I love it. And you're doing great. So I didn't realize it was your first podcast. And so that's a good thing. And I will say, you've said a couple of things that I want to just highlight, because I think it's the theme, really tacks the theme of what we do here on this podcast. And that is, you said you signed up to be a lifelong learner. I just love that. You signed up to be a lifelong learner. It's so inspiring. And I think for the listener sitting there saying, yeah, you know what, I'm not alone. I often people can forget, gee, this is difficult. It's challenging. There's lots of change happening. But the message you've given is really a shift in context to, this is exciting. We're lifelong learners. This is what we do. We've signed up for this. And so you're one of the people that's providing a tool, solution really, to being a lifelong learner, is that there's lots to learn. So here's some great content, really professional content, and bonus, it's free. As well, just getting out of your comfort zone, right? And that's it, right? So whether it's thinking about doing a small bit of education for your customers, or even just going and consuming some new content, whatever it is, if there's something that's in your way, jump out, get uncomfortable. It always leads to learning, and it leads to a step closer to where you want to be. And so those 2 points are absolutely awesome. I love it, and inspiring. And what a time of year to be inspired, right? Get going, get moving. I know we don't have a ton of time, but I have one last question I want to ask you, which, in your opinion, what are some of the keys to delivering an effective, and we'll say presentation, but online presentation, webinar, because that's what your organization does. But what are some of the just thoughts and ideas that every day you say, look, it's got to have this, it's got to have that?
Gosh, that's a tough one, because we each come to the table with a different purpose for even doing the session. And so I think that, or a session, I should say. But I think the first thing you need to ask yourself is, why am I doing this, right? What is the anticipated outcome? Are you doing this because you want to be positioned as a thought leader? Are you doing this because you have something very specific that you want to sell? Are you doing it because you want to, you have an ego to fill? You want to get in front of a large audience? Those are legitimate reasons. You're doing it because you want it on your resume. But I think the first step is to figure out what your goal is of doing the class in the first place. And then, with all good presentations, it's a matter of coming up with an outline, coming up with what's the scope of the class going to entail? How should the class be broken down? Asking yourself if you're even, if you should be doing the session alone or if you should be joined by somebody. I certainly appreciate the fact that you're asking me questions today, and I love this format. And others doing webinars may find that it's easier to do alongside somebody else, perhaps with a client, perhaps with a colleague. And then you have to ask yourself, are you comfortable using a webcam? And what length should the class be? When should you offer? Why should you offer it at that time? How intense are the slides going to be versus the conversational tone of the class? What do you expect someone to do when the session's over? Should there be a follow-up session that you're trying to drive someone to? How would you go about marketing a class? Who's your intended audience, and how are you going to reach them? And do you need assistance in getting in front of those folks? You have to ask yourself whether the class should be for credit or not, CPE credit or EA credit or whatever other designation you're trying to attract. So you have to make sure that the class isn't too salesy, that it's engaging, that you're capturing attention from the beginning. So I think there's really a lot that goes into a session. But I think the first thing is to ask yourself why you're doing it. And there are plenty of good answers to that, but that will dictate what approach you take.
You've offered a ton of thoughts to sort of start with if you're thinking about doing a presentation and doing some educational content. But I love the first one is why are you doing it? And then a whole bunch more that you can start to think about. But it's one of those things that I agree, going back to one of the things you said, you don't start off being a pro at this. You start off doing what you do. You try to do the best you can, and then you do another and another and another. But it's a valuable tool. And what I love about it and have seen others excel with is presenting anything it is, taking you out of your comfort zone, but it's helping you on so many other levels as well, because you get better at presenting ideas, you get confidence. So there's so many benefits to doing it. So if you can find a reason to do it in your business as a listener right now, if you think that this is something you should be doing, number one, great play is observe others, right? So go over to cpaacademy.org, start watching some of the educational content. You'll learn a ton from that. And then take a crack at it and get out of your comfort zone this year and do something like this if you think this would be valuable for yourself. So Scott.
Yeah, and be yourself too. I just want to emphasize, bring your personality to the table, right? So we're not often doing a session, we're not trying to emulate someone whose style we really like. We're trying to bring our own personality to the forefront, and to not try to use any specific formula, but to use the uniqueness that we all have, the unique skills that we all have, and what makes us intriguing and interesting. So don't overthink it. But yeah, I hope it's okay.
I love that.
Sorry for cutting you off there. Yeah.
No, it's valuable, and we're all trying to what people appreciate. Our very, very best friends love us because we're ourselves around them. And so if we think of that all the time, it's like, well, how do we bring just ourselves, our unique individual self to the world? That's a good thing in business and friendships, all the same. And I think in presenting, I always think of presenting, whether it's, a musician or a painter, that's what their whole life journey is to be more uniquely themselves. Now, what happens is people do start off trying to be somebody else. Like if we look at all the great artists, right? Tom Petty, for instance, right? Tom Petty had influences. He liked certain music and he played that music, but eventually his job was to become Tom Petty, not, trying to be like the Beatles or like Bob Dylan, right? It was, I'm Tom Petty, but that takes time. And again, it comes back to just if it's like anything that we do, is the more we do it, the better we're going to be at it. And so I love that you interrupted me, and because it's a great point. Just be ourselves and get out there and just do it. Make some mistakes, take some risks. There'll be gold at the end of that rainbow.
And don't back down.
And don't back down. I guess I have a Tom Petty fan as well here. Awesome. I love Tom Petty. I'm so sad to see him go. He was one of the concerts I wanted to actually see in my lifetime, but that's unfortunate. So Scott, this has been great, and we got to end with a little bit of Tom Petty. What's the best place to start with CPAacademy.org? They go to that website. Is there any recommendation around, hey, start here?
Well, because there's so much content, the ball's in our court. The responsibility is on us to make it easy to search for content. And we have different sections. So if you're a bookkeeper, there's a bookkeeper link that you can click on and see all the classes that are appropriate for you that are upcoming, as well as those that have been archived and available in self-study. Same if you're a CPA, there's different sections for you. If there's a specific company you're looking to research, you can search by name or by specific presenter. But my suggestion would be to poke around, play around. And what often amazes me is that somebody thinks that they're going to the site for one topic, and lo and behold, there's something else that catches their attention. And so I'd say just have a little fun, see what's out there, and hopefully you'll start with one and come back for more. And by all means, please feel free to shoot me a note. I love hearing from our members and new folks, particularly about the experiences they're having and what they're gaining, because we want to share your feedback with others who we believe will benefit from the tool as well. So please reach out.
Excellent. What's the best way for them to reach out to you, Scott?
Scott@CPAacademy.org.
Super simple. And we'll have, of course, all those links and information in the show notes. And heck, we might even put a link to Don't Back Down from Tom Petty. And that might be the theme song for the next couple of months. Go out there, grow your business. Don't back down. Love it. Well, Scott, thank you for being on the show. This has been both informative and entertaining, and loved having you here, and hope to have you back in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. It was wonderful speaking with you, and I appreciate your insights as well. And I look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Awesome. Well, that wraps another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.